Training quads for months and they're still looking the same, you're probably making the same mistakes I see all the time in the gym, maybe even running into knee pain. I'm gonna fix that today. I'm John with J3 University. We create a physique education course that raises the standard of education. We've also coached a lot of top IFBB pros and brought up legs quite a bit on these guys. And there's lots of issues that I've run into with picking the wrong squat for your quads or even running into knee pain. And so with quad training, we wanna focus on making sure that we get the right exercises, and that's what I'm covering with you today, and some common mistakes. This is my body part series where I cover weak body parts to get you the exercises that are really going to move the needle to get you to grow. Today, we're covering quads. Let's jump in. Quad anatomy, we'll start first to make sure we understand the anatomy, how it functions, and pick the right exercise that can fully train it. So the quad can be subdivided into 4 main heads. We have the VMO, the vastus intermedius, the vastus lateralis on the outside of the leg, and also the rectus femoris, which is that muscle in the middle that you see more superficial. Now, all these muscles do function to just extend the knee and bend it, which the knee is a hinge joint, so where you just have one simple function for that knee to go through. The only muscle that's a bit unique is the rectus femoris. It's a biarticular muscle, which just means it crosses 2 joints. It does extend the knee, but it also functions as a hip flexor. The unique thing about it is though, is that you need to be in more hip extension, so the knee farther back behind you and going through knee extension at the same time to really fully train it. So this gives us some insights into what exercise we really need to pick to fully develop all heads of the quad. Now, recent literature has come out finding that there is actually a 5th head of the quad, which is the tensor vastus lateralis. It lies between the intermedius and the lateralis. It's a knee extensor, doesn't change anything about how we would train the quad, but just a fun fact for you around that. So why does all this anatomy stuff matter? Is because I want to help you so you can dispel some myths around quad training. Make sure you're picking the exercises that actually move the needle to grow the quads. Now we're going to talk a little bit about foot stance and can you actually preferentially bias the vastus lateralis, build up more of that quad sweep. And as a whole, if you're getting in that hamstring to calf full knee flexion, that's pretty much going to train the full every head of the quad. But a unique thing about the anatomy of the quad is that lateralis has some tie-ins, the same aspect of the lower glute max on the outside of the hip. So as we get that knee pulled more in the midline, you can actually have a little bit more bias to the quad sweep. But the same thing goes for your VMO. As you bring those feet outward, that has some tie-ins closer to the adduct. So should this mean that we have to do a lot of variances and stances to make sure we train the fully quad? No, not necessarily. But when we go through this exercise next, I'm going to show you what you can do to make sure you hit everything you need to get the biggest quad you need. So let's start with the main movement that's going to train every single part of the quad that I just talked about. So first exercise we'll start with is leg extension. This is going to be the best exercise to train all heads of the quad, even the rectus femoris. The rectus femoris, we need to be in a hip stable position to where in extending the knee to train it. Now, the farther back I lean, the more hip extension I'm gonna go to, and the more rectus femoris I can get into that movement. So as far as seat position and torso position, I would lean back as far as you can to take advantage of that, but while still be able to grab your handles and brace strong. So you also don't want to be way forward, but have some lean back will get you a lot more out of the quad and get you more stretch in that position. But the hips are coming up out of the seat, that's when you start losing some of that range of motion too and losing some of that brace. So as far as seat position goes, that's one thing to look at. Another thing you want to look at is make sure that your knee lines up with the pivot point of the leg extension. This is just so the joints do align. We won't run into knee pain. And a thing around knee pain that I want to bring up too is a lot of people have issues on their extension is as they're doing their knee extension, their feet rotate out. Like I said earlier, the knees is just a hinge joint, so it's not best to load the sides of it. But as those feet are rotating out, you're loading into the side of the knee. So I want you to point that knee straight up towards the ceiling so it runs in the line of force. This can alleviate a lot of knee pain that you're running into. Now, I know there's some research out looking at if you have the toes turning in versus straight up versus out, you could put some slight bias in different heads of the quad. However, I don't do this because your limitation is going to be able to sustain that type of training and not beating up the quad tendon. And we have plenty of ways that we can put some emphasis on those areas. But the big thing here is just getting a lot of knee flexion to occur. And there is a workaround if you have a leg extension where you can't get that leg back far enough, is use something like a hustler pad, which mounts onto the front of your leg extension, allows you to get some extra knee flexion in place and more stretch. Now, leg extension is a great exercise, but we do want to pair this with a squat. But before the squat we get into, one thing that was going to translate and make all of your squatting improve is the feet. So let me talk about some cueing that's going to carry over to all the squats we're going to talk about next. One big mistake I see in squatting is not understanding how you should be using your foot pressure. And with the feet, you can create a lot of stability. When you're putting force into the ground, a more stable base is going to allow you to create create more tension in the quad, which ultimately can be more growth. So what I want you to do in your squatting, this isn't just squats, but also your leg press as well, anything where you're planting your feet down, is I want you to cue big toe down. You should feel equal pressure on your big toe and your heel. And what this does is when you cue this big toe down, you'll see my knee rotates in to internal rotation. And this creates a straight line for the quad to function at a very high degree. Also for the glutes to function a lot too. So for your ladies out there, if you don't get a lot of glute in your squat, this is a cue for you as well too. Now, if you're rolling out to the outside of the feet, you see my knee push outward, and that's creating more of a space for your adductors to function in your squat. So for all these squats we're about to do, remember, big toe down, and also this is gonna help you keep that force directly through the patella and not run into knee pain. So if you're running your knee pain in your squat, this simple cue can be the fix. So let's jump into a squat that I would do for quad bias. And just a spoiler alert, it's not gonna be a back squat. The barbell back squat. Do you have to use it for quad training? No, you don't have to, but it absolutely could be a viable option if you have the mechanics to be able to for it to work well. In a typical barbell back squat, the weight goes straight through the midline of the body. And to get down, you're gonna have the hips move back and the knees move forward some. So having the hips move back and the knees move forward, it's just gonna be a little bit of glute and a little bit of quad. But if you're someone that has like a really long femur, you're gonna have to bend over a lot to make that work, which could be just a lot more glute for you. And really for a good squat pattern for quads, we wanna keep the torso really upright and have a lot of forward knee travel. So for a lot of people, the barbell back squat might not be a great option. Now you can do some workarounds here. We could use a heel elevation, which shifts the weight forward and makes you stay more upright. Or even using a squat shoe can work great for a lot of people. Another thing that you can do for this is moving to a safety squat bar, which again pitches the weight forward and makes you stay even more upright. So if you want a really quad focused back squat, use a heel elevation and also a safety squat bar. Now, this is still not my main choice for a squat pattern. Let's jump into what I would pick for my #1 squat pattern to utilize. The hack squat's going to be very quad bias squat pattern. It keeps you very upright with the load going straight through the shoulders. Requires a lot of forward knee travel to make this very much more quad bias. Once you get your feet as low as you can on the platform, and you get to the full bottom, as long as your heel stays down. This is also where you can really have a squat shoe comes in place when I have guys that are squatting and seeing that heel raise up. Now I told you earlier about doing that big toe pressure down to keep the knees pointing forward. It's okay to turn the toes out a little bit and let the hips move outside the torso a little bit if that allows you to get more knee flexion. Now you don't want to go super wide frog stance. It's a lot of adductor in place, but kind of that happy middle ground, like have the knees moving out just enough to where you get those hamstrings to calves, and that should be your squat position. Now, different stance positions in the literature doesn't really matter. The main thing here is that you're in a stable position with the foot so we can produce a lot of output. That's going to grow the quad fully. I know, hey, go a little wider stance and you get some bigger adductors. Most people don't have big enough adductors anyway, and it gives the quad a lot of width and girth in your front shots if you're a bodybuilder. Some other workarounds if you're not able to get a lot of depth, or if you're a shorter individual, is you can take yoga blocks and stick them between your shoulders and the pad of the hack squat, which allow you to get some more depth. One thing you can do if you do have some knee pain on the hack squat is put a foam roller behind your back. This redistributes the load through the hip a little bit farther back and can remove some of that knee pain. It does take a little bit of stimulus off the quads, but if it gets you to where you can train safely, then that's really what matters for longevity. Now I went with a hack squat first, as more people are going to have a hack squat than my next pick, which is really my top pick for building the quads in a squat. The pendulum squat is truly my #1 quad movement. It's very quad bias as you rotate and swing an arc around the knee joint. So it's also pretty forgiving for people that if a hack squat doesn't work, or even for a taller individual. Problem is a lot of people might not have one, so I didn't bring it up earlier. The only thing I would say to adjust on your pendulum squat, if you're using it, I would keep the toes a little bit more pointed forward. If you move them out even like 5-10 degrees, that can be okay, but I wouldn't go a really turned out toe position knee out, because it is swinging through, and so it can load some of that lateral side of the knee, kind of like we talked about in our leg extension. We want the force going straight through the knee. So the pendulum, if your feet are really turned out, it can load kind of the side. So just make sure that you are keeping them forward and make it very quad. Keep your feet as low on the platform as you can, and making sure your heels don't come up, so when your squat shoe can come in handy. Now, what about a lift if you don't want to load through your spine anymore? And that's when our leg presses are going to come in. I'm going to show you how to get the most out of it next. Third exercise is going to be a leg press, but I'm going to be more specific, a unilateral leg press, so a single leg press. And why unilateral? unilateral is because we can bring this foot in more midline. And as we bring that foot in more, so I mentioned about that lateralis tying into the glute a little bit. Well, this is where we can really get a little bit more stretch in that area, and you will feel more quad sweep in this area. I know many people say you can't just grow the quad sweep, and no, you can't just only target that, but we can create some bias in those areas. The big cue here is keep the foot as low on the platform as you can without the heel rising up, and keep that big toe pressure. Now, that is the unilateral setup for your leg press. Now, bilateral works great too. I know many people that can't squat, they can't find the one that works. You absolutely could build amazing quads with just a leg press. The advantage is with the leg press is you can reduce some of the axial loading. It's very braced and stable position, and you're basically only going through hip flexion and knee extension. So you could just sub out your squat for a bilateral leg press, and then on another session have a unilateral leg press as well. I think both variations can work really well to make sure you're fully developed in the quad, but give this one a shot and see if you notice more quad sweep out of it. So which leg press to pick? I do really like the Cybex leg press. As you're coming down, it moves towards you and down, which kind of mimics that of a leg extension, which can make it really quad biased. Also find it works well for the taller guys. Now, a 45-degree leg press can work great. Since it does move in a straight line though, it can make it harder for a lot of guys to get their feet really, really low on the platform. That's might when you need more heel wedge or squat shoe elevation. Another option could be a hip press. With that one, as you're pressing, it's moving away and down, which kind of caters a little bit more to the glute. However, it's still a viable option to get a lot of quad involved. So how I would kind of put this in order would be the Cybex, a normal linear 45-degree leg press, then some type of hip press afterwards. But find the one you connect best for you. The last thing that I want to move on to is a squat, but also a unilateral squat, and we'll jump into how to set that up. Our final movement is going to be a split squat. Split squat does two great things. For one, that back leg is going to get fully lengthened out to train the rec fem, but also it allows you to really have to stabilize the hip. This was a mistake I made a lot earlier in my bodybuilding career, was always moving towards really braced patterns that stabilize everything. However, this is somewhat of an unstable pattern. It's going to really challenge your ability to control the hip laterally, which is going to be able to really raise the ceiling for what you're going to be able to do in a lot of your other squats and your leg press patterns. And I also see it as an injury prevention movement as well too. So with the split squat, there's lots of things you can do to adjust it. You can have the front foot raised up, which pitches the weight forward and lets you sit back more in the hip. So that's more of your kind of glute focused split squat setup. Now for quads, we want to keep the torso really upright and have a lot of forward knee drift. So what we're going to do is do a front foot elevated split squat, raising the foot up on a block, and you can still wear your squat shoes and have that heel elevation present too. And then rather than really trying to lean the torso over and get the dumbbells close to your feet, we're going to keep them close to our hips and very upright. Now you notice you are going to start with a little bit of slight knee bend already. That's perfectly fine. But to initiate the movement, you're going to have that knee move forward, your whole body's going to shift forward, and then we're going to push back. This whole movement, it's nearly like doing a standing leg extension, but it's very, very quad focused. This is a great burnout movement if you like to do stuff like that at the end of your session, or you could even do it at the beginning of your session if you do want it to be more of your main squat movement, and then follow that up with maybe your leg press. But as I'm talking about this programming, let's talk next on how should we wrap this all up together. Okay, so programming this all together, you want to bring out quads. What I want you to do is train them twice a week. And how it's structured based on the 4 exercises that we brought up is on one session, you can do your leg extension, 3 sets, and then move into the best squat option of your choice for 3 sets. Your other session of the week, you're gonna have a leg press and a split squat. Now you can try doing those in either order. You can do a bilateral leg press into your split squat, or even try your split squat first into your leg press. If the split squat is not your thing at all, easily you can sub that out for a single leg press. That's what I do for a lot of guys that aren't great at doing split squats. If you want to figure out how to program your training split that's best for you, in the description, in our next week body part series, we're going to cover hamstrings. So tune in for that. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.